Hey everybody, that is Gary Smith, that is Kaz Kenny,
Kapow!
and I am Eddie Bramble, and this is episode 8 of the Blackwaters Edge podcast. Kaz, why don't you start us off with today's fishing report?
All right, folks, it's been tough. We all know that. Weather's been just seriously up and down, very neurotic and out of control, so adjust accordingly. Fishing report, Route 335, the Big Bridge here at Key Wallace, or at Blackwater. They're catching some stripers, catching some snakeheads, a few crappie, not many. A couple yellow perch are starting to show up on the bottom, on top and bottom rigs with some minnows. Plenty of nice big carp if you want to get some corn and come down and have some fun with the kids. Just chuck out a piece of corn on a piece of split shot and a little tiny hook, and the kids will have a blast all day long, and that's always a lot of fun. Over Aries Road, we're seeing a few crappie, lots of snakeheads, a few big bass, some big snakeheads, a few bluegill. Most of the bluegill are in the 6 to 8 inch class still. We're not seeing much in the way of anything small. So that's kind of scary. Over New Bridge, it's crappie, bluegill, largemouth bass, a few snakeheads here and there. The bass that are being caught, most of those bass over there are running anywhere from 3 pounds. I've heard of some this week over 6 pounds. So live bait was the key for that, and 4-inch swim baits. Down in Mardella Springs, there's some stuff happening down there. A few yellow perch starting to show up, a few snakeheads being caught, some crappie. We expect to see a big explosion in snakehead numbers there this year from what we're seeing from last year. Over at Key Wallace, it's been mostly a few stripers here and there. This is the real scary thing. You know, I've been talking to some of the commercial fishermen this week, and this is the time that we start to see our resident white perch start to corral in the Key Wallace Bay in there and, you know, do their spawn and start staging up. Not there. Not seeing them.
That's not a good sign.
So, anyway, that's basically the fishing report. Pretty much anywhere you go, you know, you're starting to see yellow perch show up everywhere. I've talked to some guys up the bay. They're starting to see some up in the Susquehanna River. So if you're up there, enjoy yourself. Go on the backside of Garrett Island and get you some yellow perch. I heard of a few walleye that have been picked off in with them yellow perch. Hearing about some crappie and some big bluegills over at the pier where they're jigging at up there in the Susquehanna. I've heard of some yellow perch in Gray's Run up there. A few starting to show up, but not as many as they're used to seeing. That's what they're telling me. So it's something else we're going to pay attention to. Other than that, the fish are out there. It's all about putting the time in. It's all about doing what you got to do and being committed. You know. So if you see something happening in an area, you're not getting bites, and you go to another spot, you don't see anything, you might want to go back to the place that you saw some activity. You know, that's probably going to be your best bet. So pay attention to the water. Look for those little swirls. Look for the bait. Look for 2 warm days and fill your cooler.
Today should have been a good day for snakehead fishing.
There was
They're warming up this afternoon.
Third warm day.
There was a couple guys in here today. Them 2 boys were here earlier. They said they were struggling, but they were seeing stuff. And I told them both. I said, look, man, if you're seeing it, go over there. Go back to Mike Stewart a couple weeks ago with his Kaz. You know, I mean, that was like an awesome video. So hopefully them guys get over there and they'll find something. But I agree with you guys. I think this afternoon is probably going to be the day it happens.
Yeah, low tide was around 9:30 this morning.
Low tide, no wind.
Warmed up those flats real well.
Did everybody notice how foggy it was all morning?
Man, that was
this morning?
crazy. Yeah.
You know, that was kind of scary, man.
Yep.
All right, so on today's episode, we have Chris Leslie here from Big Bass USA. How you doing, Chris?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Man, I've been bass fishing since I was 8, and then we'll speed this along so it doesn't not
Take
too
your
long.
time, Nope. Take your time.
So in 2010, I started Big Bass USA, and it all started over a frog. I saw a frog in a magazine, and I started selling that frog. Come like 2011, 2012, I get a call from this guy named Kaz. He wants to join pro staff.
2013.
Was that okay?
2013,
Yeah. Okay. So it was really cool. Was that So I mean, you hear about Kaz and his antics and how crazy he can be. He sat down and really was like, "Hey man, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to do for you, but I need to tell you about who I am and what I've been through." Very open, honest, and stuff like that. And so I was actually kind of starting to struggle. And we go to do this show at Scott Sewell's at the Methodist thing. He's like, "Man, come do the show." I'm like, "Man, I don't want to do this." So you go do it, and I'll just send you the stuff. He's like, No, you need to come be here." First show, in the first 2 hours, him and I never even got to speak to each other, other than, sorry about that, our guy, Damien Cook.
That's okay. Hey, Damien! You'll be on here soon.
So we couldn't even talk to each other, other than asking prices and stuff like that. It was incredible. So we've built a friendships, and then Kaz has always been there for me and that kind of thing. Then I started just transitioning into kayaks. I got a chance to get in a kayak, and when I saw Native, they had their first one with reverse. They actually took me on as as a dealer, and started doing that. And then I finally got a place down with Denton at Denton Denton Rod and Tackle in Denton. And I actually got a storefront, and then it just took off. I mean, people want to be able to touch and see it and that kind of thing.
That makes all the difference in the world. Yeah.
It's everything, I mean, trust me, I understand it, So you come see me, it's a low pressure thing. And I always tell the guys, if anybody comes and wants to buy one. So I was like, look, when you leave here, I want you to be happy. If you don't buy one from me, that's cool too. Of course I want you to buy one, but if there's something else you want,
right.
I'd rather you do that than in a month be unhappy.
The relationship's more important than the sale.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it should be for any retail
I mean, you look
transaction.
at what's happening. And that's the really cool thing. You look at what Kaz and you and me and the other guys are doing. We're building relationships to make this, so the Snakehead thing, so we all get to prosper. We're just supporting each other.
Makes all
No
the difference in the
matter
world.
where you stand, we're supporting each
Exactly
other. And that's
right.
the important thing,
Absolutely.
So, Chris, when you're selling kayaks, the number one question I think people have asked us while talking about kayaks for fishing, how do you choose your fishing kayak?
Wow. I see this a lot. And so I think there's some criteria that people really should go through first. And I of all the things to say, I think they ought to start with price. Mm-hmm. So I know we got a guy asking, about a kayak for around $2,000. So let's say you're going to be at $1,000. And I'm not putting this, I mean, Hobie's a great kayak, but if you're going to look at that big one, the new one, I think it's the new one 360, that's a $3,000 plus kayak. Yeah. It's not something you can really realistically look at. And I'm not putting down Hobie. I mean, there's other companies, Native, Old Town, all those guys up there.
They've all got prices.
Yeah, they've all got prices, But they've also got boats that fall in those different price categories. So I think a price is the first one. And then honestly, I think the other one is your physical ability. And there's two parts of that. For one, so like I'm 50 years old, got a herniated disc. Me picking up a boat 100 pounds, that starts to become a problem for me.
That's tough to do.
Yeah. So I truly run a Native Slayer Propel 10 that's 69 pounds. I throw it on the back of my truck, and I can do that all day long. But there's boats that are 100 pounds and 120, 130. If you got a trailer, that's another great way to do it. Or if you're always fishing with somebody, But I don't always fish with people. I fish alone quite a bit. So I need a boat that I can pick up.
So comfortability is really important to somebody, and being able to get your kayak in and out by yourself is something you want to think about.
And then the other part of that whole physicality thing, I think, is so if you're going to be someone who wants to stand up in a boat, you have to be able to have the sea legs for it. You get someone that's not stable and so like that, standing up in a kayak's probably not your best idea. I've had some older gentlemen that have come in that they want to stand up in it, they shouldn't be. And instead of telling them, I help them see that it's not a good idea. You don't ever want to be told you can't do something.
That's exactly right. Somebody tells me I can't do something, that just makes me want to do it even more. That's just human nature. So it's so along with that, so Tommy Robinson, he was asking, he's looking for an upgrade this year that's in his price range under $2,000. Needs something super sturdy, paddle smoothly. He's not a big guy, so he doesn't need something giant. What do you recommend specifically for him?
Man, the funny thing is he's got so many avenues. Because I mean, you said 2,000, so
pretty big window.
Oh my gosh, he's got such a big window. I mean, so we sell Native, Three Waters, Feel Free, Johnny Boat, Riot, Vibe, and Bonafide. We just picked up Bonafide. So we sell 7 different brands. And there's a lot of great. So a stable boat, Bonafide comes to mind. You could buy an SS 107, I think, or an RS 107 for around $1,000. Great paddle boat, super, super stable. Watch guys walking out on the front of these boats, like walking out on the front of the kayak.
I've seen some of these guys doing the same thing.
It's insane. I'm going like
jumping up and down on them on the front. I'm like, you lost your mind.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
I like the way I smell just with fish. I don't want to smell like a stinking ass marshmallow.
I don't need to smell like the marsh either.
And then you let's look at someone like a brand new boat, like he says, because I think of someone when he says small, so they got a brand new boat called the 108 by Big Fish, Three Waters, but the boat weighs 120 pounds. Gorgeous boat. We got 2 of them in yesterday. Had 2 of them sold within 3 hours. So I mean, it's a big, bulky boat, but 120 pounds. But the boat sells for $1,800. So now that's a pedal kayak that he could get into. Then you got the Vibe new Shearwaters coming out that everybody's starting to love. It's got pretty much, I'm going to call it a Hobie drive, a fin drive boat. But you got different pods you can put in that you can make it a, whether you paddle it or you can pedal it. And you can upgrade that as you go.
Wow.
But it's a 12-foot boat. I think it outfits at right around 77 or with the seat, 92 pounds. So it's not extremely heavy.
It's not terrible, yeah.
Lots of rod storage. Standing platform one. I mean, it's just in a very, very showing it being a very, very stable boat. So, and that comes with a rudder on it. And I think right now they're selling for 13. We got the new the limited edition that's coming out now too. So there's some really cool boats coming out. Best thing I can tell him, really is to come by and look at stuff.
Right.
I've got some Lure 10s that if he was one of there's a version 1 and the version 2. The new version 2 has a pod come out. The version 1 where it doesn't. Well, I can do a good price. Because of the price I can do on them, I can't tell you, so you got to come see me. But I want to move these boats out.
But I think you just said it right. I think it's really important to come look,
absolutely,
and see it firsthand, touch it, feel it, like you're talking about. And the reason I think it's important is because we've talked to people at shows that have their mind set on this.
Yeah.
Then they come and they look, like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't understand what you were saying about this model over here. So I think that's something that you've really opened the door. This is where I see you doing something that other people aren't doing. You're the kind of guy that's going to accommodate the buyer that limited with time, only has a certain window to get with you. And I've seen you countless times say, okay, I'll tell you what, if that's what works for you, I'm going to adjust my schedule and we're going to make sure that we accommodate you and you can see what you want to see. And that's one of the good things that I've seen you do as far as, as you're building your business and the feedback I get from people and the way they're talking about, people are really happy with the service they're getting from you is basically what I'm saying. That's all.
Well, just like us, we all work hard for our money, and my dad's 88. I'd learned from him, hey, we all worked hard. My dad, grew up during the Depression, that kind of thing. So I know what it's like to have to work for your money. And I know with those people, when they come in there, I want them to be happy with what they spend.
Exactly.
And it really does mean that much to me.
I think personal time is really important. And I think that's something that a lot of us that are gaining momentum in this business, the guys that are getting some ground are the guys that are being humble. They're being hospitable. They're going out of their way. You know what I mean? I can't tell you how many hours I sit around at night just talking to people. I'm not getting paid, but I'm helping you catch fish. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And that says a lot because then when they come to the store or something like that and we say, hey, this is something we've been using, they buy it. You know what I mean? They trust us. That's
Service.
the thing. Building the business, building the trust, and that's what it's about.
You can't get service on the internet.
No.
That's right.
No.
So back to the question. I think with Tommy not being a big guy, he'd probably need something that's not a real heavy kayak.
Yeah.
Something under 100 pounds would be preferable at that point.
So a Lure 10.
Right.
And I think the Lure 10, the new version, you can put a rudder on. So a rudder could be a key thing. A 105 would be a good stable boat. That's a really, really stable platform. And I think Tommy might know Bruce Wagner. And Bruce has bought one from me. Great guy. He's the kind of guy that he's the kind of guy that goes, hey man, you want to try my kayak out? Come on out and I'll let you try it out.
Right. That's really good.
He's just been an awesome, awesome friend.
So when you have the fisherman who's not really a big guy, are there any tools that can really help them and like anything that can help them carry that kayak to the water or anything like that?
So here's one thing. So Feel Free has what they call a wheel in the keel. Literally has a wheel in the keel, so you can roll that.
I've seen that
right out.
Yeah.
Sea Tug makes a trolley. Johnny Boat makes a trolley for theirs, and Johnny Boat makes a nice 77-pound kayak, 10 feet long, a nice smaller. The cool thing about the Johnny Boat is that it's so adaptable. You can put a trolling motor on it. That's a fixed trolling motor. You can put a rudder on the back. What I love
is
about
this the one that you were talking about before, the Johnny Boat? Yeah.
Dude, that you can actually control with your feet, rudder control with your feet, go down and cast, and just barely, you have to adjust it with your hands. And it's just a great idea.
It sounds pretty cool.
Then you can put a steerable pod in there that you can stand up, have a steering control. They call it an 8-ball steering on the side. You could do something like that. There's just a lot of really great...
Had they introduced any kind of remote stuff for the kayaks at all? I'm waiting to see that next. That's why I'm asking.
Dude,
you see the remote thing on all the bass boats now. So
right.
So would it be convenient if I'm in the standing position, I'm fighting a fish, and I can hit my trolling motor, turn the motor a little bit instead of having to sit back down, grab it? I'm
telling you, it's gonna. You are gonna see.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, you're gonna see motor pods come out with that. And
get on it. What are you waiting for?
Just
design it.
It's going to happen. You're going to start seeing those things come along, and just you're going to see it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, the same type of tools that fishermen have in the bass industry are going to start migrating to the snakehead industry.
Absolutely.
and let me tell you something. You all saw that BASS brought out their own kayak division for bass.
I did see that. Yeah, they started that.
So, what do you think that's going to do for the kayak fishing industry? I mean, it's already the kayak industry
It's already booming.
It's one of the biggest, fastest growing in the water industry. Period. Now you're going to add that to it, and people are going to want to get into that even more.
And not to
It's
mention we got
changing the whole game.
Blackwaters Edge over here getting ready to start a national tournament trail.
Look at what this. Honestly, I tell you the truth, and you guys have seen it too. The Snakeheads around here has absolutely increased our business.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it's changed the game for us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, on the flip side, so Tommy's not a big guy, but on the flip side of that, so what kind of kayaks do you think you can recommend for the larger guy like myself, maybe?
So it's funny. I got a guy that came in, and I'm not going to tell his weight, but he was a big dude. He was a big guy, and I had to put him into a kayak that had a 500-pound capacity. Now, I mean, and we had room to him to play around in that, but so we put him into a Lure 13.5, and when he comes out, he's like, man, I love that kayak.
Good.
And then I've got the Vibe 130 that has a weight capacity of 550. I put a guy in that weighed 360. Now, I will say that one kind of scared me because just the way that boat sits, it sits low in the water, where your Feel Free has higher sides. It seems like it just sits higher in the water, and it's just a great boat. So I just think it's just, there's other boats out there. I think Jackson makes one called the Big Tuna or something like that. They make great boats like that too. And there's a lot of, that's one of those things you got to keep looking around and looking at capacities and that kind of thing.
I think the important thing here is to make sure you're doing as much research as you possibly can for it.
I tell you what usually happens is that when a guy comes in here, you're right, some guys come in and don't know what they want. Most of the time, 90% of the time, they come in and they go, I want this boat. It's this wide. It weighs this much. It's this long. It has this. It has this. And I'm trying to remember 25 or 30 boats.
They've already done their homework.
They've done their
come to
homework.
teams. That's good.
Yep. And they know what they want.
It makes the whole process that much easier.
Oh my God. Yeah. So usually what happens, they'll call and tell me what they want, and I'll go, what color? And if I've got the color, then what I do is I bring them that color so they can see it. And so it's really out there for them.
So we have another question. Andrew Maynard, he was asking about the Big Fish 120. So he's seen them transported on trucks before. He wants to know how to safely transport them via a car rack. As far as is it able to be done on top of a car?
Is there a rack that you recommend? Is there something out there that he can look to get to make his travel easy?
He was asking specifically for on the side tilt though, not one just laying on top. So on the side tilt.
I tell you what. So the Big Fish 120, if I'm correct, weighs 100 pounds. Yakima makes a rack, and here's the thing about that, but it's not rated for that weight, the one that I'm thinking of, and I can't remember the name of it, but it actually, so you can slide it down, mount it. No, something.
That's okay.
Someone's going to pop up and go, it's a stand down or something like that, but you mount it down here and you pick it up and you slide it in. But it's not rated for that. There's something probably out there, but the one thing you have to think of is, what is your rack on your car going to be rated for? For him to ask me that question, it's like someone saying, hey, what bait do I throw at this time?
Right.
What color's the water? What's the temperature? Blah, blah, blah. There's too many variables. I wish I had a better answer for him.
Right.
But we really need to look at how he's going to transport it. And then the other thing is that how tall is he compared to how tall that vehicle is? Can he get it up there safely for himself?
His height versus the car's height is a big question.
I guess the length of the vehicle has something to do with it too.
Absolutely,
Got a car that's a 4-door car. The roof is going to be a lot longer than say top of a pickup.
Yeah. And I just there's so many variables for that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of problems with my smart car getting my kayak on top of that.
I just use it as a pontoon, but wheel.
How about transporting in the back of a pickup?
I tell you what, I see a lot of guys, and you and I talked about earlier, they'll put the tailgate up and put it up like on an angle. Mm-hmm. I truthfully would rather put the tailgate down. For one, it gives you more surface area to lay that thing down. You're not putting it up on an angle. And on a hot day, like I said, you got more surface area for things to sit down in. To me, that's a better way.
I think the main issue when you're transporting it in the bed of a pickup is make sure you strap it down.
Yeah.
And not just strap it back.
Right. Yeah. No, don't just strap it you got to make sure almost like a 4-point tie down like you do on
what
big
I always
equipment.
do with my kayak when I put it in the back of the truck with it back down is I always take a rope and I put it on the front, and then I come to the bumper and I wrap it so that it can't slide out. You know what I mean? So that's just a real easy way for me. But yes, definitely want to tie it in for sure.
And I will tell you, you'd be surprised. I've watched guys like they'll crank this thing down. Don't forget it's a plastic boat.
Yeah.
Right, exactly right.
And you can snug it down without. I mean, I've snugged it down where also you shaking the whole truck,
Exactly.
but you're not cranked it
You
down.
want to snug it down like you do like a kid's car seat.
Yeah.
It's not a metal boat. This is a plastic piece of equipment. You can get it snug, but you can't over tighten it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So, the next, I heard you mention the pontoon style kayaks before. What's the advantage of the pontoon style kayaks versus your standard fishing kayak?
You know, I got to say this. So I know there's Native's coming out with a brand new kayak called the Bayak. What's really cool about this one is that you're actually going to be able to adjust the width of your pontoons. It's going to go from 30 inches to 50 inches.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Damn.
So if you want to go and really, make it very, very stable, pushed out to 50 inches, you've got a very stable platform. And I think where you're going to gain the advantage.
So they're adjustable? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
When that boat,
Does it have a platform?
I think it's 12. It sounds 12 square feet.
Wow.
It's not. It doesn't sound big, but you got a seat you can put on it. But I think that is something you can stand up and sight fish.
Right.
You can really paddle that. I don't know about theirs as far as having a pedal drive. Now, and I'll give a shout out to I want to say Jackson, but it's called the Skyworks. The Blue Sky. There you go. Thank you. Yep. They have a pontoon boat that you've seen them on some of the bass shows the guys have been fishing out of, stuff like that. Nice looking boat, and they've got a pedal drive on theirs too. But there's not a whole lot of those out there. I've only know those two actually.
Right.
But that Bayak should be really, really cool.
Yeah, that's it. I'd be anxious to see one of those.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
I keep asking when they're coming out.
do you sell the pontoon style?
When Native comes out with it, I will have it. I will have it.
So, do you know how much that one's going to weigh?
I want to say around 125, 150.
So I think that's probably the biggest difference is the weight weight
Well,
factor.
I'm sure the adjustable one probably comes apart. I know the Blue Sky does.
Because they're still designing the boat, I can't speak. I don't want to tell you yes, it does, and then all of a sudden,
I would just imagine that if it's adjustable, it slides. It probably slides apart as well.
I'm curious how that platform is going to work when you have it that adjustable like that.
What would you say? It's 12 square feet.
Something like that.
That's only 3 before.
Right.
It's really interesting. The
That
boat,
is neat.
I saw
That's still, in my opinion, a pretty big area to stand.
Compared to the hull of a kayak.
Yeah.
and then they also have little compartments on the pontoons themselves. It's a neat process. It's a neat thing.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see that too, Eddie. That sounds pretty cool.
That sounds pretty neat.
It'll be pretty cool, and I think it'll be. I tell you what, I think something like that. So let's go back. So you look at a boat like that, and look at like a Johnny boat. That's easily be able to put a motor on and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that might have shoulder problems or don't want to pedal that far, an older guy or something like that, where they can put a motor on it. The Johnny boat, you can actually put a little gas motor on the back of the Johnny boat.
Right.
You can put a motor on the back of this.
I think you can have up to a 5 on the Johnny boat. I think is maybe what
I think what they're saying right now is a 2.5 or a 3.
Maybe it was a 3.
Yeah.
I knew it was something.
So
little, I knew that.
yeah, but a 3 horsepower on a 77-pound plastic
You're
boat
flying,
is gonna move
boy.
that thing pretty good. You know what I mean?
No doubt. No doubt.
What was that, man? That's that guy chasing them snakeheads again, man. He must have got the call.
And why is Kaz skiing behind him?
And who's the 2 other guys in the tubes behind him? No, I'm just kidding.
So while we're on the subject of motors, I think it's important to point out that when a kayak does have a motor, it's treated just like any other vessel with a motor. You have to have your stickers on it just like normal.
Yeah.
Glad you brought that up.
Under 5 horsepower.
Right.
I think your stickers, they're not free, but they're like $1.
Right. Exactly.
You just have to have the boat registered because it's powered.
Exactly right. It's next to nothing to get it registered, but you do still have to get it registered when you have that motor on the kayak.
And I will tell you, if you go to get it registered, if you're going to do that, if you know you're going to if you really think you're going to put a trolling motor on or some kind of motor like that, when you're buying the boat, get an invoice that has the serial number,
Certificate of origin.
certificate of origin. So you got the serial number and the bill of sale because they're going to want that when they go in.
That's a very important point.
Because not all boats come with titles, but I think everything has a certificate of origin.
Yeah,
with it,
some
doesn't
kind of
it?
bill of sale, yes.
Yep.
So while we're on the subject of electric motors on the kayaks, what do you think the advantages of using that versus the regular paddle style or even the pedal drives? What's the main difference between the three?
Once again, it's probably your energy expenditure.
Hmm.
You know, when you can just, you know, turn the little thing and get back, and honestly, probably faster too. You know, by the time, because unless you're in good shape, paddling out to, you know, some of these guys are going. How deep are they going after these snakeheads?
Oh, they're
now
going far in
these
the marsh.
Yeah,
They're going out there.
Yeah.
They're going miles in. I mean,
Yeah.
that. I mean, I don't know what the mileage is from 335 up to as far as you can go, but it's definitely 5 miles plus.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that.
I
you
mean,
know?
I know one thing. That's one of the things that my buddy, you know, Damian Cook, as a guide,
Yeah.
when he wants to guide somebody, he'll have an idea where he wants to take somebody, and he's like,
Can
man,
you do this?
yeah, and he's like, are you ready to paddle? He's like, what? He goes, it's about a half-hour paddle in, you know, or like that, and it's like,
That's an
and-
important point too when you're kayak fishing. You've really got to know your physical limitations.
yeah, you're absolutely right.
And also hunting.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, fishing's no big deal. You sweat. Fish can't smell you. But hunting, the amount of energy
You're going to paddle in hot.
That's a very
You
good
might be
point.
a stinky
It's-
sun gun by the time you get out
go
there.
back in there paddling hard or even paddling. You work up a sweat, you know. You're blowing your cover as soon as you get
No
out.
doubt.
Or I do. I don't know. But maybe some people don't.
I
stink,
just
but,
paddle back in the kayak, and then when I get out, I don't even, you know, just roll in the mud for a minute or two, and then you just go sit in a frag. I just smell like everything else around me, you know. So, no.
So I think one of the main points to remember when you're using an electric motor on your kayak, make sure you have a backup.
Yeah.
that's
Always carry a paddle with you,
right.
You know, and then
Same with the pedal drives too.
Yes.
Still carry a paddle
carry
with
a
you.
paddle with you. And I'll tell you, I mean, the other thing is too, so this is something, and I'm not trying to sell, well, you started asking me, like, you know, ideas of how to buy a kayak. So I think price, physical ability, and the other one we didn't get to talk about was where you fish. Because if you're fishing a lot of heavy grass, or you're fishing a place with a lot of stumps, or super shallow water, let me tell you something.
I know what you're going to say.
Trolling motor and a pedal drive are going to be hard to mess with.
Right.
I say that. Now, let's say you're a guy that's going to fish a lot of different areas. One of the cool things about having a pedal drive kayak is that you can take the pedal drive out,
Right.
and now we can paddle. Now we can do either one or.
Right.
And I've done that. I've actually gone into a place where I could not use the pedal drive. Leave the pedal drive at home, grab my kayak, grab my paddle, and I got to have a good day.
I remember me and you were talking about this last year. We were talking about me getting a kayak, and we were talking about, you know, what I wanted to do, and that was one of the first things we talked about was the whole trolling motor, pedal drive concept thing, as far as what my needs were going to be.
Absolutely.
And we ruled out, hey, I don't think it's a good idea for you to go with the pedal drive or with the trolling motor. Right. You know, if you're going to be fishing in 6 inches of water to a foot of water, primarily 90% of the time,
it becomes a waste.
Yeah, I mean, you cut that cost out too.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
like where we fish back in Blackwaters,
Yeah.
we've got a mile and a half to go before you can even think about using pedals
Exactly.
or electric trolling motor or whatever.
Yeah, you're paddling that whole way, and
I
or
got
else you're stuck.
I got a mud boat and it didn't come in very well.
That's what I'm saying. In the branch where you are over there, good guy, that's nothing but a.
Yeah, we got about a mile and a half to get out of there. I come in and we just putt along with a mud boat and wham, bang.
And if you ain't got no water, you're in bigger trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's
God.
no water there.
Yeah, I went with Damien, and he actually paddled, and I was in my Slayer, and I pedaled, and we went through. See, I told you it was gonna happen. Go through.
You and Damien pedaling,
Yeah.
hitting
Wow.
the
this
grass,
is
something.
lily pads. I couldn't think of lily pads.
There you go.
Go through lily pads, and I would go ahead and pedal through, and he would paddle through, and I still didn't get hung up. You know, it was sparse enough, so it wasn't a big thing. But man, it was really.
I guess another question on this whole, and I think I've heard some guys ask this, so while we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and mention it. I mean, the trolling motor, the paddle versus the trolling motor, noise reduction, how noisy is it? Are we spooking fish? I mean, we've talked about some of that stuff, so I don't know if you have an answer for that, but, being that we're in shallower water and we're running that trolling motor versus a pedal versus a paddle, what is probably the most stealthy approach to use? How's that? Good?
It's good. I will say this. I think Blackwater is going to be a unique place for right now because of being able to get up in those tighter areas that they're not used to hearing so much of the noise.
Right.
So if it's deep enough, I still think a pedal drive depending on the noise of the pedal drive and how quiet that is, isn't bad because you're not having the splash of the paddle. But at the same time,
Good point.
the guys that can paddle, the other thing is that splash may be something that might entice them thinking,
Especially
what's going
snakeheads.
on?
Right.
Right. Going on. What's going on over there?
And we're gonna go right to this. How many times have I had you fishing and you'll see me do it? I pick my bobber up, throw it in the air, bam, 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 bam. Just smack. Take the rod, smack the water, go grab a stick over and rake it back and forth, beat the water.
Well, that's what I always tell people too. When you're casting in a place with heavy vegetation and you cast over a branch by mistake and it's just hanging, do not mess with it. Just let it tap that water, and one time when it hits, boy, he's gonna hit that hard and he'll break the branch for you.
Yeah,
Don't you worry about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So one of the coolest, when people ask me to talk about noise and that kind of thing, one of the coolest stories that I personally know of is I was throwing a Whopper Plopper 190, an 8-inch bait, almost 3 ounces, and I launched this bait, and when it hits the water, it looks like someone threw a block in the water.
I know.
And you get this white water, this explosion, right?
Explodes, yeah.
So it hits the water, explodes up white water, and then there's a secondary explosion of white water. And I go, what was that? It was a 5-pound bass that struck that bait when it struck the water. So it doesn't always scare them. And that place doesn't have a lot of motor noise and stuff like that in it either. Right. So sometimes, like we said, it may hurt, and the other times,
Well, the guys have asked me, do you think I'm not catching them because I'm running my trolling motor back up in there? And I think that the answer comes to this as far as snakeheads go. If they're eating, man.
Yeah,
that's it.
I don't think it matters how much noise we make, how much noise we don't make. And that's just me. Other species of fish, maybe, like maybe you might spook some perch or spook something else, that's on the bottom.
I mean, you can definitely spook snakehead.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And also electric trolling motor or a paddle or anything else, you can ease a paddle into the water. You can splash a paddle in the water. And with electric trolling motor, if you go, especially if you're sitting still and then you throw it in and it's on high or medium, it's going to cavitate. It's going to make some noise. You can always have it on low. And same way pedaling. One nice thing about pedaling is that's totally up to you. You don't have to see what the switch is on. It's how hard you pedal.
Right. Is your kayak, is that a pedal drive or you use paddle?
Mine, the Mokai?
Yeah.
It actually has a gasoline motor.
Okay.
Has a little 3-horse.
Was that the one where you caught it in the net on the side?
Yeah. I didn't have the motor in it that day.
Okay.
Yeah, use it when I go out in shallow water. I don't use it. But it's jet drive, and literally it'll run in 6 inches of water. It'll blow through the lily pads or anything else.
So that day, so tell the story about when you caught him in the net.
I was in a place, I was telling Chris a while ago, about the size of a football stadium, like the size of Cambridge South's stadium. And there were over 100 fry balls there that day. The wind had blown the tide out, which in the place I'm at, tide has nothing to do with it. It's all wind. If the wind's blowing north, it blows it out. If it's blowing south, it blows it in. And it was out that day, and it was about 6 inches of water most anywhere. That was the most, a lot of mud flats. And I just got up on a mud flat, just paddled and coasted up on top of us. The boat's sitting there. And I had the motor out of the back, so I had all my stuff, my net and all in the back. And I had 2 fry balls come right to the bow of the boat from left and right.
So are you paddling or are you paddling?
No, I'm just sitting there on a mud flat.
I'm saying, but how'd you get there? Were you paddling?
I paddled out.
Paddled,
yeah.
okay.
I have a dual paddle.
Okay.
And I made a little seat. Mokai you actually sit down in like you do a kayak, but it's a little more stable than most kayaks. You can stand up at it pretty good. And I made a seat out of marine plywood that set up on top of it. So I actually set up on top of it. So it's almost like a chair. I'm sitting up high. And these 2 fry balls came, and I saw the parents circling around it. And this one made a big circle, and it was coming right for the boat. And I said, this fool's going to swim right down the side of my boat. And there was a little channel there where somebody had been through with a kayak and cut a little groove in there. And I just reached behind me and took my net, and I just laid it right down. Well, 3/4 of the net's out of the water because it's only 6 inches of water. It swam right down the side of the boat. Literally, I could have reached my hand down and touched it. It was that close to me. Swam 4 inches from the side of the boat right into the center of the net. And the only thing I did wrong was when I picked the net up, I didn't snatch it out of the water. I just picked it up, and when fish started splashing,
mud
me
everywhere.
in the boat. Oh yeah,
should have gone hunting after that. You was good to go, boy.
Looked like I dove in after it or something. It was pretty muddy. But
Best cover scent you ever had.
that was a 31-inch snakehead.
That's crazy.
Snakehead in the morning, Sitkin in the afternoon.
That's right. The reason I was asking is because you were pedaling, we were talking about maybe they were spooking from the motor or anything, but you weren't using the motor.
No, but I've used trolling motor, and I have a trolling motor for the mud boat. And when I go back in that, I don't really see them running. What I find more so than the motor is I usually try to keep the motor where it's not cavitating.
Mm-hmm.
If you stand in the boat and you're moving, the boat's moving fast enough that it carries a wake. When the wake goes ahead of you, there's no, if a fish jumps, it doesn't make a big wave, but a boat will make a wave, and the wave will spook them.
That's a good point. That's one thing we haven't touched on.
So that's something with a kayak. Unless you're really rocking it hard, you're not going to get that.
Right.
With a john boat or something, you are.
I'll tell you that's interesting is, so, I'm a bass guy, and I got a chance to go snakehead fishing. Like I said, I went out with Damien. And one of the things that and you correct me, guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, guys think you use a lot of the same baits that you would use for bass.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't use them the same way necessarily.
I agree.
That's a good point.
And it's after the crazy. So Damien and I love to tease each other. It's greenfish and it's blackfish.
Right.
Because you can't catch a blackfish. Well, you can't catch greenfish. And we literally were down in Newbridge.
That's funny.
Down in Newbridge, he was catching snakeheads, and I caught 2 little snakeheads, but I caught a 3-pound bass, and I caught quite a few bass, but he caught equally amount of snakeheads as I caught of bass between the two. And then we would go down and look at things, and we'd be like, hey, where would you cast? He's like, well, I'd cast right there. I was like, well, that's where I would cast. So we're casting the same spots a lot of times. We're looking at, well, what are we doing differently?
That's a really good point. That's
really
one
interesting.
we haven't talked about.
Yeah, it was really interesting. The only thing that day, what I think happened, and I could be totally wrong, is that he was up in the pads. I was catching my bass off the channel. He was up in the pads, up in the shallower water.
And I want to make this point while you're saying this. If we get back 3 or 4 years ago, those bass would be in those pads.
Yeah.
They're not in them pads anymore.
Right.
These
They
bass
used to
have
be my
been pushed
favorite place
out.
to fish.
I mean, they've been pushed out of their home. I mean, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but seriously, you just said it. Up in the pads, that's where all the snakeheads were. The bass were out in the channel. Let's go back to while we're talking about it. Rooted bass like to spawn. They don't like to spawn in the channel. They like to spawn where them snakeheads are.
Right.
So anyway, back to that. So yes, I agree with that. Yes.
So how about your retrieval when you're fishing like that day? How were you retrieving? Medium speed?
It was interesting you say that because we both were throwing chatterbaits. He was throwing his a little different style than mine, but his retrieval speed was much slower than mine. And like I said, I brought it off a channel, and I was whacking them pretty good on bass. I could not catch a snakehead. I caught my snakeheads. When you go way back in there, you get up into the channel of it. Right. That's where I caught my snakeheads. I could not catch them out in the other places. I catch bass though.
That's very interesting.
One of the things I've noticed, like kind of a difference for me, snakeheads versus bass, is like, for instance, let's talk about, like, I can be burning a bait and a bass turns off. I can be burning the bait and the snakehead slows up and I slow the bait and he ain't turning off. He's sitting there wondering what just happened. Now, in the bass situation, we would keep reeling in and we'd recast back again.
All right.
Nah, I'm going to let the bait sit. I know he's interested because he ain't turned off. Let me try to move a little faster, move a little slower. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I think I've said it from the beginning. I mean, these snakeheads are smart. They're hard to pattern. Just when you think you've got them figured out,
They're changing.
you ain't got nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
And I will tell you this from working, side by side with John at Denton Rod and Tackle and watching him go out, watching these guys go out sometimes, you got a lot of, and I admit, throwing topwater it's a blast to do that.
Yeah.
Chatterbaits are a lot of great fun.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, some of these guys aren't picking up soft plastics and stuff like that, and they're missing out. Because,
That's a good point.
There's some really good fish to be caught that way.
Nobody.
You want to hear something crazy? I'm gonna tell you guys. So like a week and a half ago, I found an old packet. It's called Banjo Minnows.
Oh yeah.
You don't even want to know. I can tell you right now, I had 13 Banjo Minnows. I ain't got none left. And what I do have left is pieces of Banjo Minnows. and it was so like I saw them and I'm thinking, man, it reminded me, remember the Porco? Do you remember that Bill Dance? Like back the Porco, it was a piece of pork rind that was real long like a worm, but it was just real flexible. Right. And man, this guy, he was throwing them on the jigging pigs instead of a pig. He was using the Porco, the 8-inch Porco. I got to thinking after that Banjo Minnows, I'm like, I wonder a pork rind, 10 inches. Maybe we should go buy this domain name after the podcast. Anyway, a pork rind about that long. You know what I mean? For snakeheads. Why wouldn't you? You know the action on them things, man. It's way bigger than plastic.
And then how durable it would be.
Pork frogs too.
Yes.
Remember the little pork frogs?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're like fat in the front, and then they were cut right straight up.
Coming soon, the Snake-O by Wolford Store.
So while we're on the topic of these snakeheads, Chris, what's the best way to kill a snakehead while you're kayak fishing?
So
Easy. AK-47.
Would you say earlier, pull?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we throw them up in the air and everybody around you pull. No, I'm just
So we have to go back. We have to go back to the fact
Especially during duck season.
right. Oh, God.
that I haven't really caught one worth killing. Right. So, you know, I keep throwing this name out there, but my buddy Damien, who I've gone fishing with, he has a piece of rebar, and all of a sudden I'll be out fishing with him, and I'll hear that.
On the hollowness of the kayak,
Yeah,
you mean, like across the water?
Yeah, he's whacking the crap out of the head of that thing, you know. And a lot of these guys, what they're carrying, they're you know, some kind of hammer device that they're doing something like that. They're crushing their skulls.
Damien looks like a mass murderer when he comes in from fishing. I'll tell you that. He's got blood on his face, his arms, his pants, his ass, everywhere, you know. So I don't know how you get it on the back of you, but, you know.
I think the most effective way that I've heard of is like you said, you have a hammer with a nail.
Yeah.
You said it was welded to it, or a screwdriver where you cut it down shorter, and it's a short, about a 3-inch tip on it, and you can just shove it right and impale them that way.
I think Wayne Wooders, I think he's the guy I'm thinking of that has the piece of metal with a nail through it, and he just taps him on the head, not so gently. Kills him.
Pretty fish.
Bam!
Tap might not be the best word.
I'm
for
sorry.
that. Oh.
Hello.
Wow.
So I mean, Gary made that great device earlier this year with the chopper, but
That's not a kayak.
that's just not practical for inside the kayak. That's great for when you're bridge fishing. That's,
It works good for
oh man, it's fantastic for it. But
Matter of fact, I think we need to put the video up later on that thing. We haven't sold any in a couple days, so I still have that in the fin. I was looking at the other and I was like, oh, I forgot. I got to put this thing up there. I think we'll put Ricky's video up too. No, we probably going to do that.
I'd love to see like a little hammer made with a, you know, if they could ever figure out how deep they would need to make a point.
You know, you
Right.
would realistically only need 1.5 to 2 inches.
Right, 2
That's
inches
it. You
probably
don't
maximum.
need, you know.
His brain's right against the skull.
Yeah.
So
right, it's close to the top. It's just got a
got
hard
something
shell on
sharp
it.
enough to pierce the bone.
That's it. But I mean, probably a roofing nail is probably as deep as you need for that.
Yeah, that would probably be really.
So then that's something we should work on this year. Gary, get into the shop tonight. Let's design us another thing for kayaks. So now we'll have the eviscerator
Kayak
and
hammer.
The chopper.
the the Trinidad chopper and the
kayak
kayak killer, KK, No, I'm just kidding.
The kayak.
The kayak killer.
Oh man.
Get the double K at Wolford Store. The kayak killer.
So that's Kaz, you have anything else you want to add to it?
So I kind of wanted to touch on this, Chris. A couple guys that hunt have asked about kayaks for hunting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so just to carry that question on, do you know of any lines of kayaks out there that are hunter friendly? You know, that may have something storage for gun storage, ammo storage, clothes storage. I think we were talking about this earlier. I think one of the biggest things is, you know, as a duck hunter, you know, you're going to want to have, you know, decoys out there with you. You're going to want to have all kinds of stuff. So I think other than just guns, we'd have to also think of a way to transport other material also. And realistically, looking at it in the broad scheme of things, I almost think it's almost a headache. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just asked the question on behalf of some guys that have asked, is there any lines that make a kayak devoted solely to hunting?
Yeah.
Do you carry them? Was the question?
No,
okay.
I don't.
That was
no,
the
I have seen like almost like you got to forgive me. I'm not what they call a layback or a lay down.
Layout boat.
Layout boat.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I've seen some of those, the plastic ones, like a kayak that would do that. I'm not seeing, other than that, I'm not seeing what any of the major brands, you know, do that. But there are some accessories. I mean, they have some of the that are track mountable, like a gun holder. It's not waterproof
Like
though.
a turret?
Yeah, it's just a, you know,
Yeah. I mean, I'm buying that tomorrow if it's like that, you know. Bam! Bam!
But
This is why you're not in charge of designing kayaks.
That's why nobody hunts with me either. So.
but Yak Gear makes a cover for a 12 to a 14-foot kayak,
Right.
that you can
14-foot.
cover the kayak. It has places where you can reach your storage areas, and then on top of it, you can put your marsh grass and in your.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah. So there are some accessories, and they're starting to see some accessories to help out with that.
I think there's a whole market out there for that.
Yeah,
Somebody
but
opens the door.
even
you
in
know?
boats, I mean, nobody really makes anything waterproof. You just put your gun. I always carry mine in a gun bag, and you hope you don't sink
Unfortunately.
Yep.
or flip or whatever.
Yeah.
But
I always wondered how many shotguns are at the bottom of the marsh out here.
Oh my gosh.
Hey,
a lot of
not to
them have
get off
rust
it, but have you
spots
seen
on
this new
them.
thing? Have you seen the magnet fishing thing people are doing?
yeah,
Okay, so you buy like a 5-ounce magnet and you cast it out and you
Oh, yeah,
pull it
yeah,
across
yeah.
the.
Yeah.
You pull it across, dude. I'm on that. I'm ordering me a
So-
magnet next week, and I'm going in Blackwater. I'm trolling 2 of them behind me the whole time I go, and I'll pull it up every half hour and see what I got on there. Watch what I find.
I will tell you
I'm
that,
gonna find Big Liz over there. You watch.
that there's a company out there called Savior Outdoors that makes a spring-loaded bobber for your rods. It goes on the back of your butt cap for your rods, and it has a like a salt tablet. So I had this happen where I knocked a rod over. It goes in the water. The salt tablet
Bubbles.
dissolves,
Bubbles.
pops the bobber up on a 10 or I think it's a 10-pound braid. Pops the bobber up. Grab the bobber.
You fish the bobber and then you get your
How
stuff back.
about that, man?
that's a good deal.
Yeah.
That's a smart deal.
Yeah.
Had I realized that it had that rod had that bobber,
You
on
wouldn't have had to go swimming last year.
I wouldn't have gone swimming last year. Absolutely right. And what I started doing is I started putting them on all my rods. And if you're, it's a
What's that called again?
It's called a Savior Outdoors, and it's a butt cap it's a bobber butt
How
cap.
about that?
You know what I want you to mention. You gave me one of these last year, I think. Do you remember the rod carrying thing that you gave me?
The rod mule.
Yeah, the rod mule. That is awesome for down here. Literally, I can walk around. I can carry 6 rods with me at a time. I can throw me a little box of tackle inside the little carrying case. I've got everything right there at my hands. And I can put my army bag on the back to throw my fish in while I'm walking down the road fishing the ditches. I can take 6 rods now at a time instead of 1 or 2.
I have one.
You know?
It is. I tell you what, it's a neat little.
Oh, I loved it, man.
It's cool.
Oh, I love it.
So,
Yeah.
Chris, I think has some great information about kayak fishing here.
Wait, one more thing.
Oh, one more thing. There's always one more thing with
Yeah,
Kaz.
there is. We might have 2 more. So, somebody asked me this: what is the advantage to a sit-on-top kayak, a sit-in kayak? I don't know. I didn't know how to answer the question. Let me ask you this: what do you think is more preferable for angling?
Sit on top, obviously.
Sit on top.
And let's just get real. That's what you're seeing. If the sit inside was more advantageous, that's what you'd see.
They'd
happen.
still be making it, right?
Yeah. And so I'll give you an example. Bonafide's coming out one. I think it's called the EX123. It's a 12-foot boat. It's a sit inside. Must be really cool, really stable boat. But I think when you get guys, when they want the stability to be able to stand up in a boat, obviously that's a sit on top. The storage, to be able to reach storage and that kind of thing, a sit on top. And then the cool thing is that when you have those hatches on a sit on top, now you got all this storage inside that you can use. We talked about like having dry storage. You can take a dry bag and put your extra set of clothes or something like that inside that thing. Guys are using it to put rods inside. Now it's not conducive to be out on the water and try to get a rod out, but you can put them in there and load the boat and take it out.
So what would be the advantage of the sit inside then? If
Probably the best question. I'm going to tell you something. The first kayaks I ever got into was a sit inside, and I'm a horrible person. If someone else can answer this for me, honestly, have them answer it, because when I sat inside, I couldn't get my feet to where I could get comfortable.
That was something that I kind of had an issue with.
It really bothered me.
That's the advantage of setting up, to me, and that's what I struggle with, is being in a kayak all day. Your legs are stretched out. That just
And I think the other thing that got me with the sit-in kayak is I was kind of sitting like this.
Yeah.
I couldn't get into
Your natural position.
I know now you have adjustable.
A sit
I
on
know now we have adjustable seats and things like that.
That's the thing about a sit on top, where Gary, we talked about this earlier, where having to make a seat where you're not sitting down. You get that lawn chair kind of started, that lawn style kind of seat where you can sit up, you can move the seat back and forth, you can stretch your legs. Man, it's so much more comfortable. I mean, like I said, I've been fishing. I fished 11 hours out of my Slayer.
Wow.
Stood up a couple times. Next day, I wasn't sore from, that kind of thing.
Good.
So.
All right, one more, and this is it, I promise. Okay. Paddle boards. So I've had a couple of the locals here that are into paddle boarding, and they've asked me, Kaz, can I go fishing on my paddleboard while I'm out there? Do they make a paddleboard that has like a built-in tackle box, maybe a railing to hold on to or anything like that? See, these are things I don't know the answers to these questions. I don't know anything about paddleboards. I know these folks that like to go over in the morning and spend an hour paddleboarding out above the 335 bridge or over Key Wallace in the bay or something like that, So they're just asking, hey, while I'm out there doing my morning routine, can I add a fishing pole and a tackle box? And is there a way that I can effectively catch these fish, kill them, and get them back to shore? Cooler on the paddleboard. I mean, that kind of stuff.
So they have cooler bags.
Okay.
And then, and that could be for a kayak also.
I think that's what Damien, or not Damien, Wayne Waters uses.
Yep. And Damien does also.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. So, and then they make chairs. But then you could also take your chair, and what they're doing is actually using a padded cooler, or they'll take a
almost
milk
like
crate.
a stadium chair on top
Absolutely.
of the cooler. Yeah.
And then they'll take a milk crate and put all their stuff in the milk crate, rod holders and stuff like that. They'll stand up and use a stand-up paddle. So it's only, instead of having the double paddle, it'll be just one paddle on one side. And they'll be able to do the same thing that the guys are doing on a kayak. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, Vibe makes one, and it's going to be the new one. They used to call it the Maverick. They're going to change the name. It's going to be called the Kubera. Native makes one called the Versa board. So yes, there are some other.
Are you carrying these products?
Though,
if one of these folks here wanted to look into purchasing a paddleboard, could I send them your way to talk about a paddleboard?
Yeah. So the Maverick, the Kubera, we would end up carrying also.
Okay.
And I will say this, as you know, I'm a smaller company. I have to watch money just like everybody else. As we do this.
Sure. Inventory stuff.
Yep. So
I know all about it.
Yeah. So if I know guys are looking for it, I usually try to keep one or two. I try to keep the more popular color, that's kind of.
Or let me get a deposit tomorrow from the lady for you, and then we can bring.
There we go, and we'll have them brought in. So yeah.
Well, I think that's it. I don't have any more. One more.
Are you sure? No more one more from Kaz.
No.
I got one for you. No.
All right, guys. So I think for Gary, Kaz, myself, Chris, we thank you for coming on the show.
Man, thanks for having me.
And,
It was just great to be
Mr.
here.
Kayak himself.
That's right. And we'll see everybody next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, man.